Hello, and welcome to another Pokemon type tier list. In this tier list, we are going to be ranking all of the fire type Pokemon that have not been included in a previous video. And something that I really appreciate about fire types is that there are 26 of them, which means that they slot perfectly in 2 rows on the tier maker website. So, huge ups for that. I'm going to ruin it immediately by ranking them, but it's very aesthetic right now. So, let's jump in with Centiskorch. Definitely one of my favorite Pokemon from Gen 8. Gotta be an S tier for me. We all know that I'm biased for bug types, but Centiskorch is just great. And the Gigantamax form obviously is hilarious how much it elongates. But yeah, this thing, battle isn't considered, but it was a powerhouse for me in game. I love its design. It's great. I like bugs. Fire type is cool sometimes, and Centiskorch just ticks the right boxes for me. Cinderace, I don't hate Cinderace. I like Scorbunny and Raboot. I think Cinderace is just a little bit too humanoid for me, a little bit too furry bait. I don't think it belongs in D tier, but I do know that I don't like it. So Cinderace is going to be C tier. I don't think this is controversial. I think that the Gen 8 starters are pretty widely hated by a lot of the fan base. So I don't think I'm treading new ground by saying that Cinderace is a little weird, right? Blacephalon. Blacephalon is actually probably one of the perfect examples of what I wanted out of the Ultra Beasts. Because if you look at it, it's very uncanny and inhuman and clearly alien to the Pokemon universe, but it still comes together and it has a clear vision and a clear design goal that it's working towards. I think a lot of the Ultra Beasts just tried to be really goofy or really grotesque for no good reason, whereas Blacephalon is definitely strange and off-putting and grotesque in some ways, but it still comes together in the end to be yeah, that does look like an alien that's going to cross dimensions to try to disrupt the fabric of space-time or whatever the story was in Sun and Moon. Turtonator. I don't dislike Turtonator particularly. It's not really that bad, but it just kind of it just doesn't come together for me in a coherent way. It's so jagged and spiky, and it's like a dragon kind of, tortoise kind of. It's really not that bad, but it just doesn't come together for me in the way that a lot of these more strange chimera-like designs do. It's not bad, but it's just a little bit too low poly count for me, I think is what it comes down to. Incineroar's got to be an A tier for me. I was kind of lukewarm on it in the Pokemon games, but I am going to give a lot of credit for all of the personality that it shows in Super Smash Bros. It's weird to say that the Pokemon gets credit for an appearance in an entirely unrelated game, but how can you not love the showboatiness of Incineroar in Smash Ultimate? It's just so over the top, it's so flashy, it's so exciting to watch. All of its moves and its big old mug and just all of the faces that it makes, whether it's attacking or getting hit or whatever, it's just it endeared me a lot to the Pokemon, that I was kind of it's fine, I get it, but I'm not super into it. I like Incineroar a lot more now. And Litten and Torracat are fine, but Incineroar is a very strong design, got a lot of personality to it. So Volcanion, I literally had to just look up its name because I couldn't remember it. This guy is the ultimate late-gen mythical Pokemon to me. It barely exists in Gen 6. It was distributed through a mystery gift event, and I don't think it's had any notable showings or placements in later generations. Because of all of that, it's just I forget that it exists. I forgot its name 10 seconds ago. It's really not bad. It just doesn't fit in with the rest of Pokemon to me. I look at it and it's just I kind of understand what you were going for, but you just don't belong here. You don't, in the sea of orange and yellow, you just still somehow don't fit in. I look at it and I don't understand it. Volcanion is a D tier for me. Pyroar, I think, is pretty good. Turning a lion mane into a flame pattern was a pretty good choice. Very strong interpretation of the Pokemon, and the fire ponytail that female Pyroar has is still pretty good. It's a strong concept and a good enough execution, but it still comes a little basic to me, which could be argued as a benefit for the secondary normal typing, but it just doesn't quite appeal to me. Delphox, I think, again, I'm not really treading new ground here by saying that Delphox is a little bit weirdly human. Chestnut, I think, is underrated, and Greninja is great. I mean, who doesn't like Greninja? But I think Delphox kind of exists in that Cinderace territory for me, where it's just like a little bit too humanoid, a little bit weird. And don't get me started on the Gen 9 starters, because I'm just as worried as the rest of you, don't get me wrong. But yeah, I could do without Delphox, and it doesn't even have like the strong, fun personality that Incineroar does. It's just kind of like, Fox Switch. Cool, call it a day. Heatmor isn't that great of a design in and of itself. Like, it's a literal anteater. It's kind of an obvious interpretation. I will give credit for the sort of in-universe symbiosis, whatever, like mutual evolution thing that it did with Durant. I think that's kind of a funny meta thing. But so I would put it top of B tier, but I think Heatmor in and of itself without Durant to play against is just kind of like, yeah, it's an anteater and it's fire as well. So it's not bad, and because it has that thing going with Durant, I'm willing to give it a lot of credit, but it's not the best. Darmanitan is the best. I love Darmanitan, the giant, crazy grin on its face with the huge fire eyebrows. Darumaka is just this cute little ball. And Zen mode is just kind of a weird gimmick, and I forget that Zen mode exists a lot of the time. But like, base Darmanitan is such a strong and personality-filled design that I don't even care that Zen mode exists. And like, Zen mode isn't even good anyways. So like, yeah, heck yeah, I love Darmanitan. I think it's such a good fire type design. You know, it has that aggressive element, that mischievous element, that high energy firepower that you want from a fire Pokemon. I feel like it's kind of like the purest expression there is of that, like the way that fire is commonly depicted in media. You know, just the excitement and aggression that comes with it, I think, is just perfectly exemplified by Darmanitan. Big fan. Here we are again. Simisear. You've had a rough go at life, Simisear, and I don't think you're that bad. But the same thing that I've said about your siblings applies to you as well. You were in that one poll. You were nobody's favorite Pokemon. You're fine. Like, there's nothing objectively wrong with Simisear. I just think that like, people are right to not really be interested in it. It's just one of those sad realities. Emboar, you know, people rag on Emboar for being the third firefighting starter in a row. And like, fine, I guess if that's a big sticking point for you, then I understand, you know, having something share a type with the rough equivalent of it for 2 generations in the past is kind of weird. It's got so much strength and personality to it. And it's just this big, beefy, well, porky, I guess, burly young creature. And I wish nothing but the best for Emboar. It's just it evokes that sort of physical dominance that you want out of a bulky Pokemon. Like, a lot of bulky Pokemon, you know that they're bulky because of their stats, but they don't have that sort of physically imposing presence the way that Emboar does. And I've got to give Emboar credit for that much, at least. If you're mad at the fact that it's fighting type, then you can die mad. Heatran is, you know, it's kind of a weird lumpy design, and I don't love it, but it's not bad. It's really not bad. It kind of has this weird like mech tank vibe to it almost, which works with the fire steel typing. It's got the magma or the lava, whatever, moving through its body, and it has that sort of animation to it. Like, there's a lot of little things that do work about it, but it's just kind of like a little bit odd and lumpy the way that it all comes together. And I don't dislike it, but I'm not super in love with it either. It's a very middling Pokemon for me, personally. Magmortar is a Gen 4 cross-generation evolution. We know him, we love him, and I don't think anyone was begging for a Magmar evolution. However, it has an arm cannon, and similar to Scythe arms, I'm gonna like anybody that has an arm cannon. Clawitzer and Magmortar, they have arm cannons, they belong in A tier. Scythe arms, axe arms with Kabutops and Scyther, they belong in A tier. Like, as much as I care about evoking stuff other than just like coolness, so to speak, I was a 12-year-old boy once, and seeing a Pokemon with an arm cannon is just gonna tickle all the fun parts of my brain. I feel like Infernape is another one of those Pokemon that people like it because of its good stats and because of how strong it is in battle. But you look at the design and it's a fire monkey. Cool. It's a better fire monkey than Simisear, and I think that the existence of Infernape is a big part of why nobody likes Simisear. But Infernape isn't really that good. Like, it's got the Sun Wukong inspiration, and it's not a bad design. Like, it has that sort of like scrappy, mischievous energy that you would want out of a fire type. But I've just never been big on it. I don't know what to tell you. Fire type is definitely the type of starter that I've had the least affinity for over the years. None of the designs really, for the most part, have ever stuck out that strongly to me. There are ones that I can look at and be like, yeah, they do what they're trying to do, but I've just never been a fan, personally. Torkoal is kind of a weird Pokemon. It had a glow up when it was given Drought in Gen 7, and that, endeared a lot of people to it. I think tortoises are notoriously like, what's the term? Amphibious. They can be on land and they can be in water a little bit. It depends on the specific species, but yeah, they have that sort of amphibious element to them. And so making a turtle into like a fire stack, smokestack furnace is kind of a fun inversion of its typical properties. So I will give Torkoal that much credit. That said, it's a very simple design, and I think it's a design that didn't translate to 3D very well. Like, you look at its official artwork, and it's good, it's solid, it's billowing smoke out of its body, and it's got this very, like, strong, wise presence. But then you look at it in 3D, and it just doesn't work, and when they do animate the smoke clouds, they just look kind of odd in the Pokemon cartoony style. I really want to like Torkoal, but it's just got a couple of little things that stop me from really appreciating the greatness that it could be. Camerupt I like a lot. It's a camel, and they turned its humps into little mini volcanoes. Numel I think is also very cute. Camerupt is a strong design. I mean, if you don't like Camerupt, then I don't like you. I'm going to bat for a lot of fire-type Pokemon, which is a type that I don't really have that strong of an affinity for. I think there are just a couple Pokemon that I think are underrated or overhated in some way in the fire type. And inversely, there are a lot of Pokemon that I think are pretty overrated in the fire type, but that's another story. Blaziken is fine. I don't have anything against it. Torchic I think is really cute. But Combusken and Blaziken just are strange. I actually saw there was an interview with one of the lead character designers for Gen 3 that they tried to intentionally make Blaziken off-putting, just to like test the waters of like what kinds of designs would be possible in Pokemon. And I think that they succeeded in making Blaziken off-putting. What can I say? I don't think it belongs in C tier. I think it's a hair better than Delphox and Cinderace, but I'm not a big fan of Blaziken. I think that Blaziken started the trend of Pokemon being a little bit, starter Pokemon, I guess, being a little bit too humanoid. And it stalled for a little while. Gen 4 starters had a little bit of like vaguely human type elements to them, but they were still very clearly animals. And Gen 5 starters, I think, were all pretty clearly animals, even if they were like very, very slightly anthropomorphized. But then Gen 6 comes along and they pick up where Blaziken left off, and it's a mixed bag, I can say. At a minimum, it's a mixed bag. Moving forward from Blaziken. But I don't think Blaziken is that good. I think it's another case of people like it because of its stats, but if you really look at the design, it's not that great. Like, it doesn't even really look like a chicken or like a bird. It's just weird. I don't like it. Entei is pretty good. There's not much to say about it, but it fits that sort of like very like regal, noble aesthetic that the legendary beasts of Gen 2 were going for. It has those little bits of design overlap with them all being quadrupeds, them all having that like long flowing mane on them, and the sort of like crest crown on its forehead. I think that Entei is the most subdued design out of the three, and for that reason I like it a lot more than Raikou or Suicune. And there's really not much to say beyond that. Like, it still looks very definitively animal, but it has that sort of like regalness, that presence to it, that like evocation of strength that you want out of a legendary Pokemon. Magcargo is an S tier for me. I just love this guy. I forget the name of its pre-evolution. If you remember the name, feel free to comment it below to remind me. But like, Lava Snail. Bottom text, like it works, take a little guy that's known for being slow and slimy and turn it into a living volcanic eruption, like a living creeping lava field, lava pool, whatever. It's just a really strong concept that I think if it were introduced in a later generation or in any generation other than Gen 2, which had this weird obsession, Gen 2 rant, why were all of the new Pokemon only available in post-game? Not all of them, but why were so many of the new Pokemon only available in post-game? Like, if you could find Slugma, and I ruined the joke, but if you could find this guy in like one of the early caves, like Union Cave in Johto, then I think people would have had a chance to get a lot more attached to it. Obviously, people usually only like Pokemon that have good stats, but like, it would have been great if you had a little bit more time to get attached to it versus it just being like, I think it's on Cycling Road in Kanto. And like I said, the Johto games just had this weird obsession with shoving off all of the new interesting Pokemon to being in the post game. It's weird and I don't like it, but I do like Magcargo. I think Magcargo is great. Typhlosion is kind of an odd Pokemon because I don't think, like, looking at it, its design really isn't that strong, but I've just gotten so attached to it over the years, and the concept of Cyndaquil being like a little fire hedgehog where instead of quills, it just erupts fire on its back, and that's sort of carrying through with Quilava and Typhlosion. Like, I think just the way that the fire manifests itself is just a strong visual image and a visual reference to the real life animal that they're sort of based on. And so I'm going to give him credit. I'll put him up with Emboar. I don't think that Typhlosion is in any way underrated, but I like Typhlosion, and I'm willing to go to bat for it. Flareon, poor Flareon. I wish it had better stats, but it just doesn't. Flareon looks the most like base Eevee, which is kind of like to its favor. Like, it looks like almost like Eevee was supposed to evolve into Flareon and that's it. But then they had this idea of like, well, what if we make it so that it can evolve into 3 different types of Pokemon? And the rest is history. We all know that I love Eevee. Evolutions are great. And, you know, Flareon is perhaps a little bit uninspired from a fire type design. I think that if Flareon had come out in like Gen 2 or Gen 4 or Gen 6, then it might have had like a little bit of something else to it. But as it is, Flareon is fine. I like a lot of what's going on here, and I can never be too mean to an evolution. Rapidash, very clear, strong concept and good execution. Horse with fire instead of a mane. What can you say about it? It's good, strong concept, perfectly adequate execution. There's really not much to say beyond that. Arcanine is a Pokemon that I like a lot. I like a lot of what's going on with it, but I do have to admit that it's pretty basic. Like, it's just a big dog, essentially, with tiger stripes, which is a little odd. But yeah, it's good. It evokes fire typeness enough that I don't want to rag on it, but it is just kind of a basic dog. Growlithe especially is just kind of a dog. And not that that's a bad thing, but like, do something a little bit more creative is all that I'm going to say. Ninetales is... I am going to rag on Ninetales for being basic. It's a nine-tailed fox named Ninetales. Like, come on. And like, granted, as a kid, I didn't understand the folklore reference, the cultural reference to the kitsune from Japan and the nine-tailed fox spirit from Japan. Like, I didn't know that stuff. It was beyond me. I was a child living in America. But as I've grown up, it's like, this is like, it's almost worse than just putting a normal fox into Pokemon. Like, it's almost worse than just putting a straightforward normal fox, because it's such like a basic, obvious interpretation of a folk creature. And that makes me a little bit annoyed. What can I say? And finally, we are here with the original fire-breathing, not a dragon, Charizard. I do think that Charizard should be dragon type instead of flying type. I know that it's probably a balance thing, or like a weird, like, they don't want to go back on it at this point kind of thing. Charizard really should be a dragon type, but I'm not going to hold that against it, because, again, I was probably like 4 or 5 when I played my first Pokemon game. And like, I can have this little fire-breathing lizard that I keep training it up, and it turns into this cool winged fire-breathing dragon with a tail the size of like a giant bundle of ropes or whatever. I don't know. And like, obviously Charizard in the anime had so much personality. Ash's Charizard, that whole disobedience thing was like the running gag with it. But then it went off to train with the other Charizards, and when it came back, it was like this like super honorable, hardworking, dedicated to Ash type of Pokemon, and it became like his ultimate ace in all of his battles. And I just like Charizard just is Pokemon to me. The way that Pikachu is, the way that Venusaur and Blastoise just are Pokemon to me, Charizard just ticks all the right boxes. And it's, I was a 5-year-old kid. I was a 5-year-old kid once. I wanted a fire-breathing dragon, and Charizard fulfilled that dream for me. So what can I say? But with all that said, this has been the fire type tier list. Pretty solid type overall. Volcanion is the only one who I really have negative words towards. But fire type is pretty good overall. And obviously I have a little bit of a bug bias, even though Macargo isn't actually bug type. Obviously I have a little bit of a bias. But Darmanitan is great. Volcanion sucks. And the rest of them they have their merits, but they vary in quality. That's how tier lists work. If you managed to make it this far, thank you very much for watching. Please leave a like, subscribe. I'm almost done with this series for types, and then I'm going to move on to megas and regional variants. And then we're going to be right up on the release of Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, and I'll review all of the new Pokemon in that one. So it'll be fun. I hope you're looking forward to it. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.